Okay, a few seconds. All right. All right, so we're live on YouTube, but I'm gonna talk here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start the show. I'm Taylor Brown, and this is Time with Tay, the show where we talk with successful individuals from all across the world over a cup of coffee, a hot chocolate. On today's show, we're talking with David Driver. David is a freelance writer who has experience of covering sports from all over the world for teams and organizations, such as the Washington Nationals, George Mason University, George Washington University, Towson University, professional basketball players overseas, including myself and many more. He's also been a contributor for the Washington Post and for a lot of other great, well-known newspapers. So thank you so much, David, for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it.
It's great to see you, Tay. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, for sure. So first question I want to ask you, David. I've read a lot of your articles, been following you on social media, your Twitter page, and you've covered some great work from, athletes, coaches, and teams from across the world. But I just want to ask you, why journalism? What gave you this passion to write and to tell stories?
Well, yeah, good question. I think for all of us and you obviously were very successful and still are as an athlete, for all of us that played high school athletics, and I happened to play baseball. I was okay in basketball, but probably wouldn't have been in the rotation, so I focused on baseball. But even I went to a really good high school in Virginia, really known for its baseball program, and I got to work on the school paper as well. So, and I did get to play Division III baseball for 1 year, but I think, there comes a point where you realize I'm not good enough to play professionally like you are. And so you think of ways to stay involved in sports. I mean, I grew up with two brothers, and sports was a big part of our life on a farm in Virginia. We played pretty much everything. So I went to a small college in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and played Division III baseball. And, I started as a freshman, but I think I also realized, okay, I'm not going to be a professional baseball player. So how can I stay involved in sports? So I was fortunate to work for the school paper in high school and college. I got to work in sports information in college. And it kind of, I think all of us have experiences in life that are life changing. For me, I had an opportunity to work for a newspaper in New York when I was in college through an internship program with our university, and the way it worked was the internship in Brooklyn was only available in the spring semester, and that was during the baseball season. Well, it was my sophomore year of college, and I'm grateful that I don't think I was smart enough to make that decision. I think God leads us down certain paths, and thankfully that path led for me to go to Brooklyn for the semester. Just a great experience. I was fortunate the paper invited me back the following summer to work as an intern as well. So it was really great to get that experience growing up on a farm in Virginia. Brooklyn is, as you can guess, is a big difference between rural Virginia. So that's kind of the long answer to your story, but to your question, but that's kind of how I got started.
No, that's a great story. Yeah, that was pretty good, pretty cool. You played baseball in college. I didn't know that honestly, so I did some research and I looked you up. So that's pretty cool.
I wasn't very good. I mean, I was okay, I guess. For a Division III player, I was okay. I probably could have started for 4 years, but I'm just glad the path went a different way.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So I know we recently just got back in touch, and from the last time we talked when I was in Luxembourg, I think that was like in 2018. So I was
Yeah.
excited when I saw your email and we were able to just touch base. And you shared with me that you have your new book coming out pretty soon, called Hoop Dreams in Europe. And I kind of have an idea what it's about, but tell me more. What it's about, what places, what teams and players that you cover.
Well, thanks. So first of all, I'll say this book would not have happened unless it had been for my wife and my two daughters. My wife got her doctorate from University of Maryland, and not far from where you grew up. In 2002, 2003, she was looking to do something different. We had always talked as a couple about living in Europe, and she studied overseas in Europe while she was in college. So once she finished up at the University of Maryland, she took a position teaching at a really good university in Szeged, Hungary, which is 2 hours south of Budapest by train. So my wife and I and our two daughters moved to Hungary in 2003. We spent 3 years there, 3 academic years. Our daughters went to Hungarian schools at the age of 9 and 11. But so I didn't really have anything professionally to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. But once I got over there, I started, thanks to Eurobasket.com, checking out to see what Americans were playing basketball in Hungary. Men, mostly men, some women. So I just started pitching ideas to alumni magazines and newspapers in the United States. I would find out where they went to college, what their hometown was. At that time, the town we were living in, there were no American men playing on the team because of funding, and I'm sure you can relate to some of this.
Yeah.
So I had to take a train an hour north to a city right between Budapest and Szeged, where there were about 3 or 4 American guys on the team. So the first guy I think I did a story on played at Appalachian State. He was a really good player there. And so that's just kind of what I started doing. Maybe once a week going to a game in Hungary. And then the second and third year got a little bit more comfortable and familiar. I'd get on a train, go to Slovenia, go to Poland, go to Czech Republic. Obviously, I would do my leg work before I went.
Right.
This was before Twitter, so I had to try to track down the emails of American players and send them an email, say, hey, your alumni magazine would like a story on you. Can we meet before or after the game on Saturday? So that was actually, I enjoyed doing the articles. It was fun just trying to get to the right place at the right time and have some interesting stories about games not being held when they said they were going to be. So it was an adventure. It was something different. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Like, yeah, I wanted to ask you that just living in Hungary for 3 years. And just like, so the fact you took the initiative to travel and to go to these games and cover them on your own, did you have like any type of sponsorships or any type of support while you were doing this?
No, not really. And that, I mean, as a freelance writer and as a freelance, now we say it's the gig economy and it's not just journalism.
Sure.
There's all sorts of professions now where you're in the gig economy. You have to be kind of a self-starter. I wouldn't consider myself an entrepreneur, but I had been a freelance writer for a long time in the United States. And when you're doing that, you have to be kind of a self-initiator. You just can't wait for the stories to come to you. You need to go out and find them. A lot
Right.
of times a lot of times you're turned down. I mean, you might send 10 emails to 10 editors and maybe one says, hey, this is a great idea. And that's the thing about this book and this story is that a lot of people don't realize what happens to American basketball players after they leave college.
Hmm.
Um, I think the average Power Five basketball fan, say at Wisconsin, they only care about the current team. Now, if some of their alums go to the WNBA or the NBA, sure, they're going to follow them.
Yeah.
But if these athletes, I guess the story, and this is why I'm excited about the book, is it's been told a little bit. It hasn't been told a lot.
Mm.
So I'm taking basically 15 years worth of stories and kind of compiling it. And that's the impetus for the book.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cause me as a former D1 athlete, I felt that right when I graduated and my scholarship was up, it just got quiet. Even when I signed my first pro contract to play in Iceland, it was exciting that I got the opportunity. But once I was there and then been overseas for about 6 years now, it's just been kind of like people don't know until I come back home, and then they're like, "Well, how was it?" So it's great that you took the initiative to actually write about and cover our stories. And I just wanted to ask you, why do you think it does stop like right after college? Like, why does the coverage stop on us?
That's a great question. I mean, I think with the social media and the internet, and I think there's an opportunity. I think, as you probably know, there's some really good podcasts besides yourself and some Twitter followers that are trying to cover this. And I'm hoping that maybe I can do a little bit more in the future. Um, I mean, our world is smaller, right? Because of the internet, because of social media, our world is smaller. You would think that it would be easier to keep track of former athletes. But I just think, and this, we hear a lot about American society. We're so much a now and in the present. So, I mean, if you're growing up and you're a fan of the Maryland Terrapins, whether it's men or women, you're focusing on that team. The seniors graduate, they move on, then you get to talk about the upcoming class. So,
Hmm.
I can't blame the average American fan. Now, you probably know this too. European soccer is becoming so popular.
Yes.
It already has, but Ted Lasso, been enjoying watching that Ted Lasso show. Um, so a lot of the clubs that I went to had a soccer team in Europe, and they also had a basketball team. But just for some reason, the basketball I don't think is translated as much as the soccer. I think it could happen. I mean, there's more games, more basketball games are now on in the States from Europe, so I think it's going to get better. But I just think you're kind of your average Division One fan in their hometown. It's all about the current team.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I had to say one thing I have realized is just like there's a lack of coverage over professional athletes, after they play college, particularly in the US. But sorry, I'm starting to hear an echo. I think that might be. Oh, no, we're fine. I'll stay here in the echo. But yeah, so I think one of the things that I try to do with my podcast is just to provide more video so people can see it. Because it's one thing when you hear a story, but like when I was in Morocco recently, and even here in Sweden, I try to cover everything that I do and just be consistent with it so people can see like this is the day in the life of a pro athlete and what I do on a daily basis. So I just thought it was interesting that I think I mean, the way I guess the players have to do it, or like you yourself, the writers have to do it. So,
Well, that's a good point. As you know about the imaging and licensing now, and you've done this well the last year or two, and you're really great at looking at social media and diversity, and so I think you would have been great if you had been in college during NIL times. So
oh,
I
yeah.
think it's going to improve. My wife and I were fortunate to go to Spain in October. I got to cover two women's games and went to a men's practice in southern Spain. And now I'm following some of the women that I interviewed. So there's a way to promote your brand. And I know that's hard. I mean, for some people, they don't like self promotion. It's not for everybody, right? And I have trouble with that too. I mean, you don't want to always talk about yourself, but if you're in the gig economy or a freelancer, there's times when you have to. And if you want to get your message across. So yeah, it's a tough road there. But I think with social media, now I think there's going to be a new generation of Division One athletes that are going to know how to promote themselves or their brand.
That's a good point. I agree with that. That's a great point with just how everything is changing now. So I wanted to ask you as well. You've covered other sports in Europe, which I think is pretty awesome, like boxing, hockey, and wrestling. So I just wanted to hear those stories because I've gone to some like some soccer games in Europe, but to actually cover it, I just would like to hear what was your experience like?
Wow. So, well, I'll tell you my first experience in Hungary for non-basketball. I did some freelance writing for the Associated Press in Washington for a long time in the 1990s, covering pretty much the major pro teams, the Wizards and the Capitals, and some of the local colleges. So I had a connection with the Associated Press, and so I contacted the European office when we moved to Hungary. And um, long story, but I went to Vienna, Austria, and met the AP chief there, and he gave me the contact for the AP correspondent in Budapest. So it turned out there was a heavyweight fight in Hungary soon after we got there. It was actually in the town where we were living. So um, I know one of the fighters was Hungarian, maybe the other guy was American or German, I can't remember. So I just went to the arena. It holds only about 2 or 3 thousand fans. And you can probably relate to that. You know, you're kind of your
Yeah.
typical, you know, arena. And so I watched the fight from a couple rows back and phoned in some information to the AP guy in Budapest, old style with a payphone. So and then he watched it on TV, and of course he was fluent in Hungarian. I am far from fluent in anything besides English. So he watched it on TV, got some quotes from television. So that was my first boxing assignment in Hungary, and probably will be my only one. So mm,
That's pretty awesome. That's awesome you were able to tap into another sport, it's outside of basketball while you were in Europe. So that's pretty cool.
yeah, actually, while we were in Hungary, Budapest actually hosted a kind of a European Championships for wrestling. Um, so I covered. I can't remember who I covered that for. And then there was a hockey tournament in Budapest, and it had Canada, USA, Germany, and a fourth country. So I covered that for like a wire service in Canada. So sometimes if you're, you know, location is the most important thing. I happen to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. So, just thought about this. I know you covered a lot of players and, American players that play professional basketball overseas. This might be a tough question, but is there one story you can think of that you can just remember, like that was probably one of your favorite or best story? I know that's tough.
Yeah. Wow. Let me think about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, well, I'll go with, I'll just go with a recent one. They're
Okay.
all really, I mean, I've tried to ask I've probably talked to 100 American basketball players over the last 10 years,
Yeah.
men and women. I always try to ask them the aha moment, you know, when was that aha moment, for you going to Europe for a lot of you, you hadn't been to Europe, ever until after college. Now
Hmm.
that so I asked them, when did it strike it? Hey, I am living in Rome and I'm getting to play basketball for a living and I'm surrounded by this great culture. What was your aha moment? So
Hmm.
I've tried to ask that. I'll just throw out a most recent example, maybe not the most dramatic, but I just interviewed in Spain Leslie Knight. She's an
Okay.
American woman from Minnesota. Um, she stayed home. She actually, this is interesting. Obviously, most people know who Brenda Fries is at the University of Maryland. Brenda was the AP Coach of the Year at her 1 year at Minnesota. She recruited Leslie to stay home and play. There was a coaching change. Leslie ended up staying at Minnesota. Anyway, Brenda came to Maryland. But
Mm.
Leslie Knight, after college, she's now been in Spain for over 10 years. I think her
Wow.
first year out, she was in Switzerland. She switched to Spain. This is like her 13th or 14th year, probably the most of any foreigner or American to have that tenure. She married a Spanish guy. They live in Madrid. She's
Mm.
35. She studied in Venezuela in college, so her Spanish is like fluent. I mean, I wouldn't know, but I've been told. So, that's just, wow, she stayed in Europe for 14, 15 years. That might be where she stays after her playing career is over. She might end up coaching in Spain or um,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, so that's just one example. I always feel like everybody has a story to tell. Maybe some of them aren't more dramatic than others, but I think if you have, I admire a lot of you. I know at 21, 22, I wouldn't have been mature enough to go to Europe by myself and play professional sports. And so it takes a special person that's willing to take risks. It's not for everybody. You know that.
Yeah.
Some people only stay 1 year and they go home, and then others can make a career out of it. And I hope that's what my book will show.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that was a great story, great example to share. Because a lot of players do decide to stay, live overseas, and get married and have a family. So that's very common, and that's a unique story that should be told.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she will be featured in the book. She actually there's the plan is to have her on the back cover as well. So I saw her in Spain, and then Leslie, I'm sorry, Taylor Cohn. She's also from Minnesota. She played at Chapel Hill for the Tar Heels. She just graduated 2 years ago, so she's on the cover. Um, and another woman, Kelly Austria, who played at the University of Dayton. She played in Hungary 2 years ago. So my plan is to have 4 photos on the cover of Americans, and then go from there.
Yeah, Kelly Austria. I think did I play against her? I think she sounds
I
familiar. She
think,
went to Dayton.
yeah. So you probably you might have, because I
Yeah.
think she finished at Dayton and she was a guard. I don't know if she's a 1 or a 2 guard, but she would have finished at Dayton probably in 2017 or 18. Um,
17.
so
Okay,
you
she
might,
might be a little older than me.
yeah, you might have
Yeah.
overlapped in the Atlantic 10 there for a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, David, I have three more questions for you. I ask every interview. First question, what inspires you?
I cheated and I knew that these 3 questions were coming. So I hope, I'd like to say honestly, my faith, I mean, in God. I grew up in a Christian home, so I hope I can stay true to that. I'm also inspired by, I think we should always remember where we came from, not just our family, but our communities we grew up in. So that, I'm proud to be from Harrisonburg, Virginia, which has a great basketball tradition, by the way,
Yeah.
hometown of Christy Tolliver. And I've got to talk to Christy over the years. So I'm really proud to be from there, coming from a Division III school. I'm proud of that. I didn't go to a journalism school like Syracuse or Northwestern or Maryland. And my school did not have a football team. So yeah, so I guess I'm hopefully drawing my faith and my community that helped me get to where I am now.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I kind of switched up my last two questions, and
Uh-oh,
that's
uh-oh.
okay. So I know I usually ask about the pet peeve and guilty pleasure, but I'm gonna ask, what is your ironically, I know you just have a book coming out, but what is your favorite book or podcast if you can think of one?
That's great. Great question. Thanks to my wife, we've been listening to a lot of podcasts over the last 2 years of driving. Or um, there's 2 really good ones. One is an American couple that's actually living in Prague. This is not sports related at all. They are what they do is, and they like you have lived in different countries. They've traveled over. What they do is they'll pick a country and then pick 5 books about that country. It's called Strong Sense of Place, and they are on Twitter, and they're really good. It's a 45-minute podcast. They're going into their 3rd year. So even if you're not into sports, it's just a really good, you learn
Oh
about
man.
different countries. Yeah. So Strong Sense of Place, a couple, the woman is from Pennsylvania. I can't remember where the husband is from, but
Okay.
that's probably one of my favorite podcasts. And favorite book, I've got to go with The Great Gatsby. It's a classic. I need to
Yeah.
read, yeah, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Long Island and New York, back in the day. So I know if a novel is good, I've read it more than I've read that one twice. I needed to read it again, but that's probably my favorite.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a great book. I remember reading that in school, so
Mhm.
I agree. Last question. I'm doing kind of a study, something I've noticed like since the pandemic, everybody has been streaming videos online. And I'm just curious, which video subscription service is your favorite? If you have one, like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, if you have a favorite one.
Um, that's a good question. I will go with and I'm not an expert at it at all. My wife usually takes care of that stuff, but we've been watching Ted Lasso, and I think that is Apple, if I'm not correct. I think I'm right on that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we actually watched 2 more episodes last night. I think we're almost done with the second season. As people probably know, it's about an American football coach from Kansas who moves to London to be a soccer coach, and I really enjoy it. I mean, there's probably some cliches in there. You probably can relate to some of the cliches, but I think it's well done from a soccer perspective. I think the action is very authentic. There's some really good supporting characters. So I've really enjoyed watching Ted Lasso on Apple.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Apple. I prefer Apple. I watch everything from Apple. So I was just
Okay.
interested.
Okay. Oh, great. I got lucky there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you, David. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Would you be back if we do another
We do
one?
another one? Sure. Maybe when the book is actually in my hands, it'd be fun to connect again. But hopefully, it'll be out by March Madness in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great. I'm looking forward to it coming out. Definitely. Well, I feel honored for being in there. Just a little bit. That's an honor to me. So thank you
Well,
again.
okay. And please send me your your parents' address in Bowie, and I'll be happy to mail you a complimentary copy. And I should let your your followers know that when you were in high school at Bishop McNamara here in Maryland, my daughter was playing volleyball at Elizabeth Seton, so in the rival conference. So, and then my other daughter played volleyball at Roosevelt, so not too far from where you went to high school. So,
Wow.
um, I was going to ask you if you played volleyball in high school.
I did not. I played
Okay, okay,
soccer.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
great,
So that's small world, small world. Yeah,
yeah.
McNamara, that's a great school. That was a good time. I really love McNamara. I love my time there.
Mhm.
So
Well, it's a great basketball school and other sports as well, right?
yeah, definitely. I think it's a great school overall, just academics, and no matter what sport you
Hmm.
played, like even on the soccer team, I had a blast. Like that was
Hmm.
probably one of my favorite years, my sophomore year. So
Okay. Hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I see
Yeah.
some here in Cheverly. I see Bishop McNamara stickers on cars going around town. So,
Oh yeah,
so
it's everywhere. It's kind of sickening. They're
yeah,
everywhere. But no, thank you again, David, for coming on the show. And I look forward to catching back up with you and when your book comes out. So
great. And
yeah.
best of luck to you the rest of the season in Sweden.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're getting close to the end around April. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well,